This is the Marathon Handbook Podcast, and I'm your host, Michael Doyle. I am joined today, as always, by my pals, Alex Sear and Caitlin Tossi. Gang, we're going to get ugly today. We're going to talk about 10 race day disasters and what you can do about it to fix it in the moment, leading up to it, how you can prepare to avoid the mishaps, the roads that the three of us have gone down before and don't want to travel again. Pretty good timing, I'd say. Like, Caitlin, you're running Boston in like 5 weeks time.
Yes.
Maybe a subject we don't want to inject into your mind right now. Like,
exactly.
Here's 10 things that could go wrong for you in Boston. But yeah, let's get into it here. We got a little plan here. So we're going to go through, we've created a list, a listicle, if you will, of 10 things that could go wrong, that have often gone wrong for runners in any sort of a distance event. We won't just focus on the marathon. We'll go all over the place with this one. I think these apply to most races, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And then we'll get into kind of why they happen, a little bit of the science behind why they happen, whether we've experienced this before ourselves, and then how you can fix this so that this does not happen to you and your race doesn't get deep sixed by one of these 10 horrible experiences in running. Horribly common. Let's go through the list. You guys ready?
Ready. I'm looking at the first one and I'm like, okay, so Boston disaster number 1. I mean, you want me to take this one just so as a nice little introduction?
Go for it, Caitlin.
This one, actually, I threw there as number 1 because this is my biggest fear for Boston. Even though I know it can be a problem, it's going out too fast and hitting the wall. And if you haven't done it, I mean, I think almost all of us have done it, whether it's been a marathon or any race at all, trail race, 5K, 10K. Mostly it happens in a marathon, I think, because it's such a longer endurance event that when you start out, you've got everyone around you, you're super hyped up, you're incredibly tapered, you've been carb loading, you're just like ramped up to go. And of course, the first half of the marathon is going to feel much easier than the second half at your marathon pace because it's something that you need to be able to hold for 42 kilometers or 26 miles, right? So you're starting out and you're just like, no, but you know what? I feel really good today. Instead of that 3:30, I could totally pull off a 3:20. I'm going to go with the 3:20 pace.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Right? Has this happened to you guys? Or you just decide, no, today's a great day. I'm going to push the pace, 30 seconds a kilometer.
I had this thing happen to me in Ottawa was this 2022? So 3 years ago. And I know why I did that. I had a very strict time goal for myself that I figured I could hit. And instead of being like, I'm going to run off feel, I just went off the pace from the start. So it was this 10K and I wanted to break 30, which means 2:59 per kilometer. Mm-hmm. And so I ran the first 3 kilometers at that pace, just taking it off like a metronome. And I think I got through that 3K mark in 8:57. But the thing was, I wasn't ready for that pace, or at least not on that day.
Right.
and then just suffered for the next 7K. Like, things went off a cliff and I had a terrible race. So that's my most recent hitting the wall thing. But hitting the wall can mean a couple different things, right? It can mean bonking when your glycogen stores are depleted and you're kind of like woozy and you almost have to walk and stop, which is like probably what would happen in a marathon. Whereas my version of bonking, smaller races, when you pass that lactate threshold, right? And you're starting to go anaerobic. You're in that last energy system that doesn't last very long.
Yeah. We could almost I don't know if this has been coined before, but yeah, it's like type 1 bonking and type 2 bonking. And I would describe your bonking as like type 2 bonking, where it's like, it's a lactate hell, right? Where you've just gone anaerobic and everything goes sideways and it gets precipitously worse very, very fast. Whereas I think the sort of the traditional conventional bonk, the marathon bonk, is specifically scientifically the glycogen stores in your body. So like the units of energy, the sugar that your body, the carbohydrate energy that your body stacks away, hides away from you for race day. All that carb loading you've done is for a reason. all those stores get used up too quickly, too early in the race. And then you go into this depletion mode where, yeah, like physically things go sideways and also like mentally, psychologically things go sideways as well. We will sadly probably see a lot of this in Boston in a few weeks when we're covering that race. There's so many like social videos pop up every year around major marathons where you see someone kind of doing the staggered walk into the finish line. And that's because they have bonked, like marathon style bonking. So how do we avoid this? Caitlin, what's your plan for avoiding this?
Okay, my plan is, and I think that it happens in Boston a lot because a lot of people look at the elevation in the race and they say, well, the first big chunk is downhill, so I'm going to go faster, and then I'm going to make up, you're going to try to put that block of time in, gain a couple of minutes, because then when you get to the Newton Hills, you've got to slow down. So it's all this, kind of playing around with the pacing strategy. So I think number one, if it is just, going out too strong, I think you really, really need to go in there thinking, no matter what my mind tells me, the second I get off the start line, I have to stick to my pacing strategy. I mean, I'm sure most of you, for your training for your races, you've practiced your race pace, right? We practice our race pace during the week. We practice our race pace in our long runs. And so that that's the race pace that you should be sticking to. So I would say rule number one is, even though you don't want to, stick to that race strategy that you've put together beforehand.
Yeah, and I would also say, and Mr. Sear can speak to this in probably greater detail, but like conversely to that, particularly if you're running a shorter distance, something, half marathon, 10K, even 5K, you should consider approaching the race a little bit organically. Give a little in the beginning to take a lot in the end, so to speak. Even in a 5K, the race is longer than you think it is in some respects, right? If you go out super hard, and it's going to feel hard, and that's why practice and experience running these distances goes a long way. But if you've run a bunch of, say, 10Ks in your life, and then you go into it with a big time goal like Alex had, and the first 2 or 3K, you're like, this doesn't feel the way it should. A little adjustment and running a little organically, running by feel a little bit for a kilometer or two to get yourself settled down can save your race. Because otherwise, I mean, Alex, I don't know how it panned out for you in the end in that 10K, but I'm sure it was not the time.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter.
We won't go there.
Don't search the results for the Ottawa 10K championships in May of 2020. Don't do that.
Yeah. But no, this is something that I think is super important that everyone should keep in mind, even if they're not an exercise physiologist. You don't need to be an exercise physiologist to understand what's happening in your body when you start suddenly feeling really tired. When you're running hard in a 5K, 10K, or half marathon, you're in this zone that, for lack of a better term, we'll call lactate threshold. That's what people call it, is when you are clearing lactate, or technically hydrogen ions, what's happening in your legs that's making your legs hurt, faster than you are encasing them. And you can run at that lactate threshold speed for something like an hour. And so that's a good zone to be in when you're racing a 10K for most people, or even a half marathon if you're a competitive runner. But as soon as you pick it up and go beyond that zone, say you start sprinting, well, then things get way harder real quick, and sometimes you can't recover. So when you're at like the second, third, fourth kilometer and you feel like you're brushing up against that zone, that might make or break your race. And so a decision to slow things down a tiny bit for 30 seconds can actually save your time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea if you have to grab it mid-race. Like if you don't take my advice and stick to your pacing plan, which who knows, I may not even take my own advice. So if you don't stick to the pacing plan, what Alex and Michael are saying is perfect for that mid-race, like, oh no, what do I have to do? You have to just like take a breather. You have to slow down and get everything under control. I think that's a really, that's great. And refuel. And I know we're going to talk about fueling a little later on, but maybe that'll help you. So make sure that you're fueling and see if a little bit of extra glycogen in there is going to help you, get your pace, maybe not the pace that you had planned in the beginning, but just get you in there so you can finish the race and not have to DNF or not have to walk or, do that zombie walk halfway through.
Yeah. And I would say in closing here, before we move on to disaster number 2, is that
there's more.
no pun intended.
So many more.
Oh my God.
Is that, yeah, there are 9 more. Is that when it comes to like the classic marathon bonk, particularly if you're new to running, so if you're new to the marathon in particular, you can practice this in, right? You can, I would say, with long runs, start fueling during long runs to get your body used to it, and then also kind of get a sense of like how that energy intake affects your performance, right? And I think it's always valuable to use your long runs as a practice, as some sort of like a laboratory for figuring out and experimenting and figuring out what works best for the marathon. And then have a nutrition plan when you're going in on race day. Don't leave it to chance, take the gels that you've been practicing with in your runs throughout the course of your training season, bring those with you on the course, have a plan when you're going to take them. And then also be mindful of like what's on the course. What sort of nutrition's on the course, what sort of hydration is on the course, where it's placed, and have an idea in mind as to like when you're going to hit those aid stations and when you're going to skip them as well. Because you don't necessarily need to hit every single aid station, especially if you're carrying nutrition with you on your run. All right, let's move on to number 2.
One of our favorites.
Oh boy. It's we can set the clock back to 0 days without talking about poop.
There's a reason we rank this one as number 2.
Oh yes.
Oh,
yes.
Alex,
Caitlin,
so clever.
I guess
poop jokes.
Caitlin didn't even mean to do that when she was putting the show notes together, I imagine.
No, I didn't. I didn't. But I should say that I did, because it would have been clever.
Subliminal. Yes. Yeah. So the dreaded GI issues, having a bathroom emergency, a porta potty stop, it's happened to, I can get into like the TMI section of things here, but like it's basically happened to every runner at some point. If you run enough races in your life, this is going to happen to you at least once. I mean, it's happened to like famously Shalane Flanagan running the Boston Marathon. She had an incredible porta potty stop because it was so quick. But like, it just happens. It happens to elite runners. It happens to recreational runners alike. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Caitlin. You want to,
oh God, it's fine.
Explain to us why this happens.
Okay. I can, get
you're the
started
ultra
on
runner
this.
here.
Yeah.
You've experienced this more than we have, I'm sure, but,
yeah, well, because as the race gets longer, there's just more time for things to go wrong in general, and especially stomach issues, because especially when you're thinking about ultras, you're also thinking about, fueling for a longer amount of time. And let me tell you, if you're running a 100K race and you're going to be running for, 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, you don't really want to take 32 gels. And if you do, that's also really going to mess with your system. So you try, can you imagine? So, you're eating a bunch of different things, trying to fuel correctly. And even if you follow your strategy perfectly, that doesn't mean that your stomach is not going to get messed up in a longer race. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong, even though we can talk about how to make sure that you control the controllable before the race. But I would say if it happens to you mid-race, the most important thing to do is if you have any sort of problem you can solve during a race is to take care of it right away. So don't think like, oh no, I'll wait till the next porta potty. Oh no, I'll wait till the next one. Just stop for a second. You're going to run better. Stop, figure it out, go to a porta potty, take, the little bit of time that you need, because you will absolutely make that time up when you feel better afterward. Yeah. Right. So, just a lot of people make the mistake of being like, I don't want to waste the time to stop, but it's a million times better if you just stop. So I would say mid-race solution is just find a place to stop and take care of it, and then be able to continue and hopefully enjoy the rest of your race.
The big races usually have ample amounts of porta potties, usually by the aid stations. Maybe something that if you've had some tummy troubles in the past, or this is somehow a fear or phobia you have, just make note of it when you're looking at the race course map, because they will mark it on the race course map. But I went down a little scientific rabbit hole here, and interestingly enough, sports scientists, people who focus on this stuff, don't really have a very clear understanding of exactly what's going on or why this happens, and why certain people have more of a propensity for GI issues than others. So there was like a study done, I think it was in 2017 in Finland, a study of runners who had GI issues. And so they had a control group, and then they had this group who were self-reported that they had major tummy troubles in races constantly and in workouts. So they had them all run a 90-minute workout at like 80 or 85% of their 10K effort. So like we're getting into sort of like the ballpark of lactate threshold to trigger this. And the only real clear findings they had were there was nothing really different going on between the people who have this problem often and those who don't. And their hypothesis is that the intestinal wall becomes more permeable when you stress it, and that there's actually like a little bit of temporary like damage to the intestinal wall that allows the chaos to seep in. So all this to say, there's no real good answer. I would say just stick to your plan. And if your plan works in the long run, it'll probably work on race day. Like that's what I do. I don't know, Alex, like what's your approach? Do you have a history? You're among thousands of your closest running friends here. You can tell us. It's okay.
Yeah. The good thing about racing shorter distances is you don't actually brush up against that so much. In university, we would fit in this thing called the PRP, the pre-race poop, and we'd make sure to have that happen before the start of a cross-country race. And I became actually pretty scheduled with it. And I knew that if I had a bowel movement in the 30 minutes before the race, it would probably be a good one. We would joke that it was like this evolutionary thing, that when you start feeling the fight or flight response, your body did everything that it could to drop extra weight to run fast, which
that's interesting.
I don't know. Maybe there's a bit of truth to that, right? Like a biological thing. But
I think that actually happens with animals when you think about it. They like shit themselves and then start running, right? Like they yeah. It's the equivalent when you're choosing to run a road race or whatever. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's like if I can drop that extra 2 pounds, actually 2 pounds is a lot. 2 pounds is a lot. Yeah. If I can drop that extra
my God, man. That's carb loading.
It's one a day for me, boys. It's never happened to me. We had this ultimatum in university that I'll throw your way. So you're running to the finish of a race, and you have hundreds of people watching you and cheering you on. You're winning. This is the biggest race of your life. You desperately need to shit yourself.
Oh my God.
Do you keep going and shit yourself anyway? Or do you stop, take care of business, and risk the victory? What do you do?
This is like
oh boy.
Yeah, this is like a personal philosophical quandary, right? It's like, what do you care more about? Like decorum and personal and self-respect or winning. Caitlin, I'll let you take this one.
Oh my goodness. I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to throw that one to me. I was actually in deep thought, really trying to think about what I would do. And I think I would say, you know what? There's always going to be another race that I could try to win.
Dignity prevails.
I think so. I think I would. What about you, Michael? What do you do?
That's an impossible question to answer, actually, unless you've experienced the situation specifically yourself. I would like to say that my own personal dignity would overrule my just carnal desire to win, but it would really depend on the circumstances. I feel like Sear would just be like, to hell with this. I'm going for it. Well,
I'm going. I want the win.
So I had years to think about this, and I chose to keep going because there's an off chance that you stop, stagger away from the course, and poop amongst the masses, and that's even worse. So just keep going.
Okay.
Indeed.
Oh my goodness.
A little bit of a cautionary tale is that there was a guy, I mean, you can Google this, you just like runner who shit himself or whatever, and you'll get a million image results of this same poor fellow like 15 years ago who became basically a meme because he did that. And that's his legacy on the internet. I just know him as dude who shit himself to win a marathon. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Yeah.
Well, let's just say there are a couple things other than making sure you stick to your strategy. Don't eat any new foods before the race, right? Even though I know these things seem obvious, but they're not that obvious, because when you're going to a big marathon, there's a lot of peer pressure to go out and have dinner the night before and to go out with all, your group who's going to run the marathon. Be really smart, find a supermarket, buy the things, have a really easy meal, just do something that's safe and that you're always used to eating. And same with the morning of. And also just make sure I think Ambi had a study that he put together in one of our newsletters a bunch of months ago. And it actually said that your body takes 72 hours, not the 48 that we were thinking before, the 72 hours beforehand to really clear out anything that you're processing. So don't take care of yourself just the day before. Take care of yourself about 3 days before. And that could also mean limiting fiber and such, because, fiber is obviously not going to be the best thing for you to stock up on the night before a marathon. So just be really smart with your fueling, with your fueling schedule about 3 days before your marathon.
Yeah. And I mean, I have a routine that I've been living by for like 15 years now, which is basically like, I try to time my meal the night before, like a long run. And then of course a long run just creates that practice every week for the goal race.
Right. Yep.
And so I kind of live like a little bit of a weirdo monk on weekends where like, Saturday night, I sort of keep it very simple. I keep it sort of basic, simple carb focused. I try to get my meal in relatively early in the evening because, I run relatively early in the morning on a Sunday for a long run, and race day can be early as 7 a.m. in a lot of these major marathons. I know like Chicago goes out pretty early. Obviously Boston and New York are a little bit different, but you have to kind of plan for that. And then like race morning, I just have my routine, and my routine works. I eat a simple breakfast, like bagel, with some honey on it, 3 hours before I start running. I hydrate. I have a coffee because I'm a coffee guy, and it's a diuretic, so it helps. And then it's a basic routine, right? It's like, stick to your plan, and it should work on race day. It shouldn't, things shouldn't go awry on race day if you have a good routine. Okay, we've dealt with poop. Congratulations, guys. Reset the clock back to zero. Zero days without talking about poop on this podcast. Number 3, mildly less icky and embarrassing, but still there. Chafing, blisters, and shoe problems. So chafing can mean any number of things. We can get into that, but yeah, so this is basically, this is an obvious one. This is, I think, this might be the most common race day disaster. And it can be obviously averted in advance, but it also is a scenario where I feel like it's the one you can power through. Either of you had, I've got one particularly gnarly race day story about a blister, but have either of you encountered this problem? And if so, what have you done about it?
You know what? I haven't had a blister in years. And I wonder if it's because the shoes are getting better, but I used to. And this was in my college days, so like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And I learned that not taking care of a blister can be bad for a couple reasons.
Oh, yeah.
One is the obvious. If you just run through it, it gets worse. So my university cross country coach had this legend about him, a story about him, that he ran through a blister for so long that it eroded to the bone.
Oh my God. I didn't know that could happen.
Which I don't know if this is urban legend or not, but that always scared me to not go too far. But the other thing is, and I didn't realize this, if you have a blister, say on the side of your foot, you are going to subconsciously try to run around the blister.
You're right.
Yep.
And if you do that for too long, that could lead to other problems because you're changing your stride a little bit. And then all of a sudden, the other side of your foot kind of hurts. And you ignore it for a while. And then 2-3 days pass. And here's a metatarsal stress fracture. Or, here's some plantar fasciitis. So, and that happened to me once. What I do is second skin. You guys know second skin?
Yeah.
Just like this, like a little Band-Aid with a type of air. Was it an air pocket or gel
it's like
pocket
gel.
inside of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That just protects the blister better than a regular Band-Aid. Do that for a few days and it's gone. Also, If a type of shoe gives you blisters, change your shoe.
Yeah.
Don't just struggle over it. Don't do the like, oh, I'll callus and it'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it's just using, practicing, like we're going to say a million times in the podcast today, practicing everything before, don't wear new shoes or new socks at the race. And also be really careful. It did happen to me one time. I'm also not a blister person. I don't get blisters, luckily, yet. However, I did, during an ultra marathon, I tied my shoes too tight. And I didn't realize that at the beginning. And all of those hours later, I had pain on the instep of both of my feet for about 3 months afterward. So I did some, what I should have done is, and what my suggestion will be to everyone, my recommendation is, if you have a pebble or something uncomfortable, your sock is not quite right. Like there's just something that you need to adjust. Take the 30 seconds, take the stone out, adjust the sock, untie and retie your shoes, do whatever you need to do. Because if you just say, oh, I'll just run through it, it's only this much more. You may end up facing a lot more pain down the road, and it might force you to stop instead of if you just took those 30 seconds to fix the problem right at that time.
Yeah, I would say in my history of running marathons in particular, which is obviously like, it's not quite an ultra, Caitlin, but it's like, it's a long time to be on your feet, right?
Yeah.
And it is an opportunity to introduce all sorts of problems, as we're talking about today. A lot of these issues happen in marathons specifically because you're given the amount of time to have these sort of challenges or problems emerge, right? And I have stopped a number of times in the marathon to fix these things. And I never think twice about the like 30 seconds it took me in the 2000 whatever marathon. It's like, oh, I ran a good time and whatever, like that 30 seconds is that 30 seconds. There's a lot of time for you to make up in a marathon in the end, right? So I would say deal with it, otherwise it will get really, really ugly. My very first marathon, my sock I was wearing a sock that I really liked. It was like a Nike, like super thin sock that was nice for racing in, but I had worn it a bunch of times and it tore mid-race, and then there was a blister, and then a blister formed under my foot on the ball of my foot. The blister obviously started expanding. It turned to the entire ball of my foot. Then it burst.
Oh no.
Then the sock got cut up in the like skin. And then
my God.
I finished the marathon and did very well and was very happy with the performance. But when I took my foot off, like my shoe off, like my foot, half of my foot was missing. It was like a horror scene. I was like, oh my God. But
give us the size of this blister. How big did it get? Are we talking like a marble or more like a baseball?
No, it was like the size of like a tennis ball. It was huge. It was it was like half of my foot. It was so bad that I had a race 3 weeks later, and I had to duct tape my foot together to run the race, which probably was a mistake, but I luckily didn't get an infection. All this to say, treat yourself to a fresh pair of socks. Make sure your shoes aren't causing hot spots or blisters. Racing shoes, super shoes, are a tough one because they're a big investment. You don't want to run in them too much before you run your race because you want them to be relatively fresh. But I would recommend doing in the weeks before a marathon, do a pre-race like workout or a longer run in them to see how they feel. And then on race day, if you do get a blister, say worry not, friends. Just like soldier on through it, get to the finish line, then deal with the blister afterwards. You can run through an incredible amount of discomfort and pain, and just sort of just accept it and stay focused. And we'll talk about the mental side of things with one of these race day disasters down the line here. But yeah, I think it's doable to get through the race and actually do fairly well with a nasty blister. But like, again, practice all this stuff. Don't try to do anything new on race day, I think would be the takeaway here. Okay. Let's pivot to, let's actually take a quick break, and then we'll get into what I think is probably the most, like the thing I dread the most. And I know, Caitlin, you've experienced this recently.
Just last week.
And we've talked about this. We're going to talk about the dreaded side stitch after we take this break. We'll be right back. The dreaded side stitch. I have been haunted by the side stitch in the past. I lived in fear of the side stitch for like over a year. Caitlin, I know you most recently, like we were having a conversation, the three of us, thinking of it, was it last week when we were recording previous to recording the podcast, you were telling us about how you had this like sudden side stitch just completely ruin one of your long runs.
Yeah, it ruined the long run. I got back from the Boston Run Show. I was going to do my long run on Tuesday. I was really pumped about it. And I get started. I'm going at this great pace. Everything is coming out perfectly. And with 4 kilometers to go, I had such a bad pain in the side of my abdomen that it made me first slow down. I said, okay, it's just a stitch. It's fine. And then it made me stop. And then I waited. I tried to breathe. I tried to do all the things you're supposed to do for a side stitch, which we can get into in a second. Tried to run again. Literally was at a 90-degree angle, bent over, trying to run, obviously couldn't run, stopped running. I tried this 3 times and I said, do I have appendicitis? Like, is my stomach going to burst? That was how painful this was. That has never happened to me before. I've got some side stitches in some half marathons where you're just really putting in a hard effort. And I feel like during this long run, I was also putting in a bit of a moderate to hard effort. So I was probably breathing hard, which is where these side stitches can pop up when you increase your intensity. And it just completely derailed my entire long run. And I had to stop. I think I was going to do 28K and just stop at 24. And I said, I cannot move. And I was literally worried I had some other sort of issue.
I mean, it's a mystery. The long and the short of it is, if you go down the science rabbit hole on this one, again, similar to GI issues, sports scientists are a bit perplexed by this one. There's no real clear answer. It could also be that the quote unquote side stitch, or just known as the stitch, is actually 3 or 4 or even 5 different things that could happen to you. But I think the main hypothesis is that there is something going on in your abdominal wall that is cramping, and it's almost like it locks and is prolonged and can even last like days. You can feel that sort of, it's almost like you've been punched in the gut, like for like 2-3 days. It can even sort of surface on an easy run the following day.
That's what happens.
There is a technical term for this one. And also, this thing is such a big deal that it has its own Wikipedia entry, which I was surprised to see. Yeah. So it is technically called exercise-related transient abdominal pain, or ETAP.
ETAP.
Yeah. Apparently, like 2/3 of runners get a side stitch at least once a year in this massive survey that was done several years ago on runners. So this is an extremely common experience. It ruined one of what I was anticipating being like a big breakthrough marathon for me many years ago. I was running Chicago and I just got this wicked side stitch about 18 kilometers into the race and ended up walking over half of the race. I just it just completely wrecked my entire race. And it became a thing where like I was actually kind of living in fear of running a goal race for a couple of years after this and getting that side stitch. Right. So
yeah, that's the boogeyman of the side stitch, is like, we don't know really what to do when it happens. Alexis, my partner, came back from a run the other day. She's the beginner runner that you might have seen on YouTube. And so when she encounters these things for the first time, she asks me, and she comes in and she's like, what happened in my abdomen? I had to stop midway. And I had to admit to her, listen, I know what this is, side stitch. I don't know what you do about it. And I've tried to figure it out for the 15 years or so that I've been running, and I still don't know. So I don't know. It's like, I had an old gym teacher way back when I started doing cross country as a child, when I would get a lot of side stitches, weirdly, who told me that the best thing to do when you get a side stitch is to regulate your breathing. And for some reason, that is what sticks with me today. That's still the thing that I do if I happen to get one. Just try to get in a breathing pattern, because we don't always adhere to those when we're out running, especially when we're running hard. But even if it doesn't help the side stitch, it's probably best practice just to try to keep you somewhat metronomic through your run, whether it's like, 1 big inhale and 2 small exhales, or vice versa. Just keep it consistent.
Yeah, that's exactly the first thing that I try to do. And what I always try to do when I get a side stitch is control my breathing, because usually when I'm running at a high intensity, my breathing gets way out of control. I know that we've talked about this before on the pod. So yeah, getting that under control is a good one. Also, just number one is also just to slow down, which it's going to probably force you to slow down anyway. And think a little bit about your posture, like what I was doing with bending over, which is making it even worse, of course, because I can't, if I'm hunching over, I'm tensing up, I'm compressing my diaphragm, and I'm not able to get that breathing pattern under control. So that's also going to make it worse. So I would say, really try to think about your posture, get your shoulders up and back a little bit, and try to at least give yourself a chance to get the air flowing.
I have a hypothesis. I have a working long ruminating theory about the side stitch, because as I said before, I've lived in, abject fear of this thing for years. And although I'm confident now that, because I've worked through a stitch in a few races in the past, and I think there's something going on here. There's a mind-body connection thing that's happening with the side stitch. I'm convinced of it. I think it's when you're running sort of lactate thresholdy pace, or slightly slower than that. So it's happening more in a longer distance event than a shorter distance event. I think it's often happening when you're trying to hit a goal time and a goal pace, and you're not focusing on how you actually feel. And so you're running a little over your head for a little too long.
Yep.
And maybe in the back of your mind, this, or you fear this, and that doubt is creeping in. And I would love to see somebody like rigged up to like an EKG and measuring their breathing and seeing what's happening physiologically throughout this process. Cause I bet your heart rate is climbing. And I bet you your breathing rate is shallow and fast. And that's part of what's causing it. Because what I have done that has been effective, it's not 100% effective, but it tends to like curb the sort of sharpness of the side stitch coming on, is exactly as you both said, just like calm yourself down, slow it down a little bit, try to get your breathing rhythmic. I try to breathe out more than I breathe in. There's like a weird irony that's at play here, where I think you've probably like just been like sucking wind a lot without realizing it. And calm yourself down, and like positive reinforcement. That's like, this isn't going to wreck my race. I'm going to get this in control. I'm going to get relaxed. I'm going to regulate my breathing, and this stitch is just going to fade away. It's going to melt away, and I can continue on. And that has helped. And Alex, you'll be tickled to know that, because I coach elementary school kids, I am now that gym teacher. I'm not a gym teacher, but I work with the elementary school kids. That does say to them, like, you just need to settle down and regulate your breathing and just work on. I just run with a kid who's got a stitch, and I'm like, okay, breathe out. And I just get them running rhythmically, breathing out on one footfall, the same footfall each time. And it tends to work after a couple minutes. So there's my like not so scientific, not so 100% successful all the time recommendation. But like beyond that, it's a tough one. This is a mystery.
So far we've learned that the mind is a powerful tool that can A, perhaps cause you a side stitch, and B, potentially make you shit yourself. Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. We're good. Running's fun,
Scary.
right? Yeah. Why do we do this again? Okay. Number 5. This is not related, but sort of like, it's like, it similarly can kind of really tear down your race quickly, which is leg cramps and muscle fatigue. I mean, I guess the obvious one, Caitlin, is that this is sort of caused by electrolyte deficiency, or the leg cramps sort of more problematic cousin, the like minor injury that then becomes a major injury in a race, but that's a different thing altogether.
Yeah, but the most recent research is actually on the cusp of debunking the dehydration. I mean, yes, it could be a result of dehydration, but in most cases with the most recent research, it's actually thanks to overexertion. So you're pushing yourself a little too hard in the beginning, you're pushing those muscles a little too hard, and they get fatigued and they end up getting cramped up because you're just going beyond what you're supposed to be pushing at. So it can be one of two things. So when you're thinking about muscle cramps or trying to prevent them, it's again, stick to your pacing strategy. Don't go out too hard. Don't push too hard too fast, right? And thinking about keeping your hydration and your electrolytes in sync. So it could be A or B, but most of the time I see that this is happening to runners who are just doing a higher intensity than necessary.
Right. Because I wonder if that point of exertion comes faster if you aren't well hydrated. Like, I wonder if it's a combination of the two. And also nutrients, right? There's a lot of research around potassium and how that can help your muscles perform better for longer if you have some potassium in the bloodstream and in your body when you're racing. Of course, a key source of that is the banana, which is probably why it's become so common at races. Just have bananas lying around before and after to prevent muscle cramps.
I just ate a banana before we hit record on the pod so that I'm nice and ready to go, so I can do this.
It looks like you're all supple sitting in your chair there. That's good.
I'm feeling pliable, supple. I'm like Tom Brady-esque right now. I'm even the same age pretty much. But have either of you had the like dancing muscle after a race, like where you stop running and you look down and like your calf or quad or whatever is doing a weird like wavy thing and you're like, I'm not even moving my leg and it's moving for me. This is so disturbing. It's like there's an alien in there.
Yeah, you can ask my girlfriend. I don't think I've ever had a dancing muscle in my entire life, but I've had that. Like the calf moving. I've had it in my eye too before, when your eyes of twitching post race.
It's a bad sign. I think something else is going on there. You're like, I'm about to die, have a stroke. God, yeah. So I guess that's an interesting little detail, though, Caitlin, that probably more to do with muscle fatigue than it is to do with. This is what a segue. Number 6 on our list of nightmare scenarios, just straight up good old fashioned dehydration.
Oh, let me tell you, that happens here. You can imagine here in Costa Rica all the time. We're running in the heat and humidity, and we have to be masters at keeping ourselves hydrated. But of course, it can happen just at any hot race. And actually, it can even happen really easily at a race that isn't that warm, because you think that you don't need to hydrate, right? Because you don't feel thirsty and you don't feel warm. So then you don't hydrate, and then you also are going to experience dehydration, right? So the problem with dehydration is that when it gets very severe, it can become dangerous. So that's why we really need to keep, because not only is it going to decrease your performance and make you have a bad race, or it could stop you in your tracks, right? You could get dizzy, you could feel nauseous, you could get really fatigued, you could, kind of be in a haze. And so that's one of the reasons why you have to make sure your hydration is always in check.
Yeah, I had this thing happen to me in Ottawa. So this is the second time I mentioned Ottawa in this podcast. They have this race weekend in May. And the reason that most of my bad performances come from that race weekend is not a testament. It's a great race weekend, but it happens at the end of May, right when the weather changes a whole lot in Canada.
Yeah.
In the span of a few weeks, your average temperature will go from 8 to 10 degrees Celsius, which is what's our Fahrenheit calculator here.
Oh,
probably
boy.
Probably 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Is that roughly
maybe like in the
comparator?
around there.
Yeah.
And
nice running weather.
Nice running weather to the odd day where it's many degrees ahead of that, right? Or beyond that, like 25 degrees. So the races are warm. And this one race I did in Ottawa on that weekend, I remember as soon as I started the race, maybe like 500 meters into this 10K, my mouth got really dry. I didn't have it the whole time. I finished my race somewhat wondering, like, why didn't I run well? All my workouts have been going, what was the issue? And then I found out the problem because there was this booth handing out free beers at the end of the race. And I'm 29, and so I can't drink that well because I'm after that whole generation of people. We haven't learned how to drink like you guys have, and so I sip.
Nice.
Fair enough.
I sip on beers quite slowly. I had never chugged a beer as quickly as I did on that day, and that's when I realized I was thirsty. I needed something to drink, and it killed my race. And it's weird because it's like this subtle thing that you can't. Sometimes you don't realize that you're dehydrated.
And you know that if you get thirsty, it's too late. Like if you started out that race with dry mouth already and you were thirsty, you know that you're already dehydrated. So, not only do you need to make sure that you're hydrating before, maybe in a 10K, you're probably not going to drink anything. So what's most important for you is to make sure that you just come into the race hydrated. And then for us during a marathon, we've got to be sipping constantly, because you also don't want to get to the point where you get to an aid station, you like want to guzzle down 3 cups of water because it's already too late and you're feeling bad. Of course, do that if you're thirsty and you feel that dry mouth, because you need to rehydrate anyway. But the goal is to try to keep that steady flow of fluid within throughout the race so you don't reach that point.
Yeah, and it's tough to differentiate between what we categorize as like a bonk and a dehydration experience. The only time I've ever really had a huge disastrous last like 10 or 15 kilometers of a marathon was in my wisdom decided I needed to run a Boston qualifying time, and the only race I could find that fit was in late June in southern Ontario here in Canada, which is basically like anywhere in the northeast United States, similar type weather. We're getting into summertime. This is not marathon running time, and it was around like low 80s Fahrenheit on race day with very high humidity. And I was a race by Niagara Falls, right by the Canada-US border. And I just staggered in the last 10 kilometers, like completely and totally wrecked. I was just, every aid station I was grabbing, like they had full 500 ml bottles of water out because they obviously recognized that it was a bit of a disastrous day from a heat perspective. And I'm just like chugging entire 500 ml bottles at a time, dumping an entire bottle. And I don't like that, like getting drenched and dumping water on myself in a race. And I was doing that just out of absolute desperation. So yeah, I think having a hydration strategy in play, the obvious one, I mean, these, I know these sort of, for a seasoned runner, these are all no brainers, but for somebody who's newer to running, maybe they don't consider these things, or just like a good reminder. It's like one of the great traditions of a distance runner is to obsess over the weather in the days leading up to the race. But a good aspect of obsessing over the weather is having a really deep understanding of what you're going to be faced with on race day. So Boston's a great example of this, because Boston sometimes gets like an unseasonably warm spring day in April. Not to freak you out, Caitlin, but
that would be okay for me.
Alex and I will be enjoying a beer somewhere on a patio on Monday afternoon. Yep. Hopefully it will not be so nice that we're in shorts and a t-shirt. But it's sometimes the case in Boston, right? So
yeah, it was actually very funny. I was talking to one of my athletes the other day, and he's also going to be running Boston, and he lives on the other side of the world. And he said, yeah, I've been looking at the weather. And I was like, you've got to wait. We have to wait 5 more weeks, because the weather that you're seeing in Boston right now changes so drastically. And from watching the Boston Marathon for so many years, some days you're out there shivering, and some days it's just absolutely scorching. So we don't know until a few days before. So just, be prepared. And for any ultras out there who are listening, if you're running a race in a very hot climate, or if you're, somewhere like Costa Rica, or just a very long, I'm so used to this that you just want to make sure that you do what Michael mentioned, even though he said he didn't like it. If you get your hands on cold water and can kind of throw it on the back of your neck a little bit, if you're running through rivers, take the couple of seconds and dunk yourself in. I know it's very, very different path than a road marathon, but when you're running for hours upon hours in the heat, you really want to make sure you keep that body temperature down. And it's just a really good idea to take that extra amount of time to do that, to make sure you stay nice and cool and that you stay hydrated at the same time.
And if you get really desperate, there's some exercise physiological sort of papers and whatnot you can look at if you're really afraid of heat and you're going to be running, like, say, I don't know, does Singapore have a marathon? Singapore is just an awful place for running because it's so hot and humid, right?
I have 4 athletes from there, and
that's why it came to
it's
mind.
so hot. Yeah.
It's like, and if someone like me going to a place like that, it's like, I need to prepare for it. I had this experience when I ran in Hong Kong. I was not ready for it. Is the heat centers of your body, your head and your like crotch area. That's where the most heat escapes and also concentrates as well. So if you cool those areas, like
ice,
shoving ice down your shorts while you're racing, You see it happen in like crazy hot races, especially
Yep.
like longer races. Your extremities, your fingers, your hands, they are like they're little thermometers for your body, right? Like they tell you how hot or cold things are. So like give them that biofeedback. It's like maybe a like minor hack that you can use as well. So I tend to do like a little bird bath if it's a bit of a warm day. I take a cup of water, I splash it on my hands, I put it on the back of my neck. I find usually kind of like cools things a little bit, relaxes things a little bit. And as we get to understand the science of that a little bit more, you see runners at an elite level using like cooling vests, coming into the start line with their body temperatures as lowered as much as they possibly can before they race. We saw this in the Paris Olympics last summer, right? Especially in the marathons. So if you're for whatever insane reason having to do like I did many years ago and run a race in the summertime to qualify for Boston or whatever, just you can approach it in that quasi elite way by trying to bring your body temp down as much as you can before you start. Okay. We've kind of covered 7 and 8, but we'll touch on them really quickly. So fueling mistakes and energy crashes. I mean, that kind of falls in line with some of the stuff we've already talked about before, Caitlin, but like just delve into that a little bit more for us so we can unpack that.
Okay. You just want to make sure that you have, like Michael has mentioned, practice absolutely everything with every long run. I do the same thing that Michael said. I do the carb loading the day before and the dinner. So I just have a really good long run. So you want to make sure that you do your fueling. So whatever you've been used to, you want to do your carb loading a few days before. You want to make sure that, limit your fiber. The morning of, you want to have your breakfast 3 hours beforehand. Bring a little snack for the bus ride if it's a marathon like Boston, or have a little maybe waffle. I like those little honey stinger waffles for about maybe an hour before. I know they're so good. It's just an excuse to eat sweets. So I have one of those about an hour before if I want to pop an energy gel. And then once you get started, this is the most important thing. You cannot go back on your fueling strategy. And I know sometimes it's hard and it depends on a lot of conditions. Sometimes if you're used to taking, like I'm going to try to take a gel every 30 minutes for the whole marathon. That's a lot. And I know that at some points I feel like I just don't want to anymore. My stomach doesn't want to. I don't want to taste the gels anymore. But I know that if I don't, I'm going to have my glycogen stores depleted and I'm going to have maybe not a full blown crash, even though it could lead to that, but I just won't run as well as I want to. So stick to your fueling strategy in the days leading up to and throughout the race so you don't get that glycogen depletion bunk.
Anything to add, Mr. Sear? We've covered that one off.
Ooh, we've covered that one. Know the difference between your simple and complex carbs. Don't do what I did when I was in high school and have a massive plate of pasta right before the race, washed down by a 1 liter of chocolate milk. It's
Alex.
Yeah.
It's not the way. But the good thing is everyone else did the same. So we were all on the same playing field, and it was who could finish the race without, wait for it, shitting themselves. So simple, complex, right? Banana right before the race, good. Big plate of pasta, do it the night before.
Yeah. I would say like within the window of running the race that morning, like just keep it simple and maybe less is more. I mean, my main approach is like I just have a couple of benchmarks I hit time on the time frame leading up to a race. Like as I said before, 3 hours before the race, I'm eating my little light breakfast, getting my coffee in because I'm a coffee drinker and it helps. And then I'm hydrating. I'm sipping on some sort of like whatever your hydration fluid carb drink of choice is, be it Gatorade or Morton or whatever else. And I cut it no later than a half an hour before the gun goes on the race. I like 30 minutes beforehand. I will often bring a little like disposable 500 milliliter water bottle with either water or just like whatever drink I'm drinking with me. It's more of like it's like a safety blanket more than it's an actual tool of hydration, but I'll sip on it here and there if I'm getting dry mouth or nervous or whatever. But then 30 minutes before the race starts, if it starts at 7 a.m., 6:30, I'm stopping. I'm not consuming anymore. I'm letting it go. Because I want to feel a little bit, I don't want to feel like super bulky and bloated when I'm starting my race. Although with a marathon, you can sort of carry some stuff on board with you because you should be running in kind of a sub-lactate zone that you're good, should feel comfortable in the first half, right? So should,
I'm like,
hopefully,
all right.
Should.
in
Let's
theory, yes. Okay, so weather curveballs. I mean, this is just a scenario where it's like, if it's, 80 degrees and humid for a marathon, or even a half, or even a 10K, or even a 5K, you're probably going to have to adjust your expectations. Now, making that adjustment is a tough thing to do. I'm sure we all have stories of doing that. If you've run enough races, you've faced a weather scenario where you've had to make it, be it wind, a headwind, crazy torrential downpour, super duper cold, and you're not used to it or ready for it, or like crazy humid or crazy hot. You just have to make an adjustment to match that. Getting that number is a very difficult thing. Alex, have you had to give up on a goal time in order to save a race?
Have I had to give up on a goal time in order to save a race?
Or should ask, have you ever refused to give up on a goal time and then
Many times.
Yeah,
And burn yourself out.
and then paid the horrible price afterwards?
Many times. Yeah. Especially in 10K. So far I've had a pretty blessed half marathon career. I've had 2 half marathons that were both okay. So I've been lucky with that. But the 10Ks, yeah, like that's something you learn as an older runner, at least after doing it for quite a few years, that like sometimes the best race that you can have is not what you want. And there's still value in getting that suboptimal performance, but you need to get over your ego, and you have to do that as you're running. You have to do that as you're feeling tired. It's not easy to do.
It's
Like
not. And I have had it happen to me in a lot of training runs. And this is another side of Caitlin that you guys are going to get to know right now. I have literally stopped. Like I had a temper tantrum. Actually, I may have mentioned this before, because of wind, because we have some really strong winds here all the time. And I'm trying to do pace work. And instead of just letting it go and running on the rate of perceived exertion, I get really upset about it and I'll just stop. I'm like, Caitlin, you can't do this in a race. Like, get it together.
Oh, you like stop and you're like, damn you, wind.
Yeah,
damn you.
basically, I'm yelling at Mother Nature to kind of like, come on, help me out. I just need an hour of good weather. Stop the wind. So it is hard to adjust your expectation. But I mean, I need to learn from the suggestion that I'm giving and my own recommendation to saying like, you just have to accept it and decide that, you're not going to run the time that you want to run because it's sweltering or the wind is blowing in your face the entire race.
Now, there are some suggested modifications in terms of like times that you can do that are out there. I'm not sure if any of them are super duper accurate. It's like, if it's, X degrees more than this baseline temperature, you should adjust your goal pace by Y amount of time per mile or per kilometer. I don't think, you can try to get scientific with it and like game for that. But the bottom line is I think, especially with heat, it's precipitous. It's like it's on a nasty curve where it's like the hotter it gets, the more insane it's going to get and the more difficult it's going to be to run any sort of a time. I'd say there's, as Alex said, there's definitely value in hanging in there, especially if you've like traveled for a race. It's a big goal race. I mean, I know it's frustrating. Yeah, if it's ridiculous and like kind of dangerous, and this has happened, and actually big marathons have been canceled in the past, or there's like a warning system in place, particularly with major marathons where it's like warning level red or black or whatever scary alert it is. It's like you really need to back off here. It's happened in Chicago, definitely happened in Boston over the years, where the race is just massively compromised, particularly by the heat or by a crazy headwind. Yeah. And I'd say there you just have to kind of run on feel, which is also difficult because it's like, it's just going to feel awful. If you think it's going to be dangerous and you're not going to be able to finish, maybe that's cause for a DNF. But like, we don't like DNFs here on the Marathon Handbook podcast. And
no, we don't.
I would also say, if you're going out, like, let's use the 10K example. You're going out to run a 10K, you're in great shape. Your goal is sub 40 minutes. big, fat, round number, a lot of people long to run under at that ability level. And say you're all trained, you're ready to go. You're like, I know I can run under 40 minutes. Like everything is pointing to 39 low. And it's just really bad conditions. And you're talking yourself into running like 39 high. That could turn into you running 50 minutes. It may be a scenario where you got to let go a little bit and run 41 minutes and be disappointed with the shiny number or the lack of a shining number. But ultimately you've like saved the race. And then by comparison, you'll look back and you'll be like, wow, I'm happy I did that versus go out like an idiot and then walk the last few kilometers of the race. So it's tough to do that, but sometimes you got to talk yourself into it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll also offer the devil's advocate take because this almost happened to me in Houston. So I was going into this half marathon about 6 weeks ago now, where being in the southern US and no longer in Canada, everyone was fretting about the fact that the temperatures were going to be around freezing on race day. And it took almost everything for me and my training buddy who was doing this race with me not to talk ourselves out of our goal because of the weather. You almost have to start the race and see, because the opposite is also not good. If you discount a good time before the race just because people are saying the weather's going to be bad, you might actually be robbing yourself of a really good day. And guess what? We both had a good day because the weather was not great, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. I think there's manageable, there's reasonable, there's like sort of like, there's bad and then there's really bad. And if you're really fit and ready to go, you might be able to pull something off that's decently close to what you're aiming for with suboptimal conditions. But there's nothing worse than getting into a start corral and you hear everyone like just lining up the excuses. They're like, well,
that drives me nuts.
It's just not a good day today. I guess I'm just going to have to back off. Going to tempo run this one. Yeah. Know thyself, be honest with yourself, make tough decisions, and be willing to modify your goals on the fly as well, right? Have those A, B, and C goals that we've talked about in previous podcasts. Okay, let's take a quick break and then we'll get into the last two. Number 9, I think is a personal favorite, and one that I think a lot of people can benefit from. And I'm curious to hear what both of your points of view are on it. We'll be right back. All right, guys, home stretch in disaster day here in the Marathon Handbook podcast.
Are you guys depressed yet?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, you've given me 8 things that can go wrong on my goal race. Now you're going to give me a 9th and a 10th. Yes, we are. So number 9, and this is one that I think happens to every single person who runs a race every time they run a race, whether you can think back and recall this in every race you've run or not is a matter of perspective and a question about memory. But basically, number 9 we categorize as mental fatigue and losing focus. I think this happens to everybody in a race. I think I got a lukewarm take here. There's no such thing as a perfect race, particularly longer races. There's always going to be moments where you sag, you lose mental focus. Usually things aren't feeling great physically. You've got to regroup, especially if you're doing a marathon. So
do you know the great thing about ultras, guys? So I can talk you into it even more.
The great thing. Go on.
One of the amazing things about ultras and mental fatigue is that you'll go through so many moments of mental fatigue, but you'll also bounce right back up at some point. So don't worry.
Oh, you do you?
What I say to people in ultras is, once you get down into that big dark hole, as maybe Courtney, how she calls it, the pain cave, when you get into those moments, you do bounce back up. So it's like this ping pong of, I feel really great. Oh, I don't feel so great. I feel really great. I don't feel so great. And I think that's what brings me to the solution as to what I do, because I can say that I almost have those moments in every single race when it's long, when it's a long race. If it's a marathon, if it's an ultra, I always feel like I have those moments where I'm I can't do this. I mean, it happens to the best of us. It happens to everyone. We just, we've trained really hard. We're getting frustrated. We have low moments. So what I do in that situation is I start breaking up my race into smaller portions or smaller, so I think, okay, this is from this aid station to this aid station. I've just got to get, 10 kilometers here. And then from this station to, okay, it's just 10 more kilometers and so on and so forth. So depending on how long the race is, I kind of plan my race strategizing from aid station to aid station. And it helps me break it down a little easier mentally. So it just doesn't seem so overwhelming when I'm having a bad moment. I don't know if that works for anyone else, but that's like my number one tip when things are tough.
That's a good one. And actually, you gave me something to think about these longer races. I'm not saying that I'm going into the ultra world anytime soon, but it's true that in a shorter race, like a 5K or a 10K, and this is probably because of your energy systems, things don't get better. Like they start bad and they get worse and then you're done. That's it. In a marathon or ultra, that's the story you hear, right? Like I was struggling between Ks, 34 and 41, and then I rallied and things got better. So my strategy, so I do more short races, right? So 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathon is kind of my bread and butter. And so my strategy is a little bit different because I don't anticipate any type of upswing. In a race, pretty much every time, I have 2 low points. One happens near the beginning, and then one happens like 2/3 of the way. The beginning low point is coming to the realization that you have a long way to go and you're running really fast and this is hard and you have a really tough half hour or whatever ahead of you. Mm-hmm. What I do in that scenario is I just remind myself that I've always been through that and I've always made it past that. There's never been a race where that thought had scared me so much that I went off the course, right? You always make it through that moment. The second moment, 2/3 into the race, I start to feel pain, real pain, whether that's a 5K, a 10K, or a half, and the full is the same thing. I can't say that I've always made it through that moment. I had a DNF period in my life when I was 19 years old, learning how to lose, learning how to not get the results I wanted, working through the panic of having a terrible race. I had this like 3 or 4 races in a row where I would drop out. Every single time it felt terrible mentally. The bus ride home, the next morning, all of these things. And now I've used that like shitty moment as reinforcement. When I get to that place 2/3 into the race, I tell myself, that's my mantra to get me to the end, is like, what's going to hurt more? That last 3 kilometers of the race or the shame of dropping out, which will last for an unknown amount of time, which might make you drop out in the future, which will have you like sheepishly go back home and tell people what happened in New York City or wherever you traveled. It's the worst. And every single time when I feel like I want to drop out, that comes to mind and I change my mind and it's much better to finish the race.
I think dropping out, and you just touched upon something sort of philosophical here, Alex, which is I think dropping out sort of lets you learn how to lie to yourself and also become a good liar to other people. Now, whether you're actually fooling anybody or yourself is another thing altogether, but you can, at least in the moment, to protect your ego, trick yourself into thinking that you believe this lie. And it's such a dangerous, dangerous thing to do to yourself because you're just robbing yourself of future opportunities, right? My thing is, I rely pretty heavily on the mantra, pasta, mantra. Let's go mantra.
Tacos or tacos? Tacos. Definitely not.
Tacos.
I definitely no.
Mantra. Go mantra.
Mantra. Mm-hmm.
So the mantra. I mean, if you're unfamiliar with what a mantra is, here's a little fun fact for you. I just looked this up today. I did not know this before today, but it is. I knew it was a Sanskrit term, a dead Indian language, Sanskrit, similar to Latin in that nobody practices anymore, but is a interesting historical language to study. Won't go down that rabbit hole today. We're not doing a linguistics podcast, but it's a word that means instrument of thinking. And so basically, I think it's a good idea to have a mantra in your back pocket, particularly for a longer distance event. Any distance event, but a marathon in particular, you just have it there. It's something you can pull out and use to keep you going, keep you working. Something simple. It's a phrase, a statement, a single word, a motto for yourself for that race. I don't know if either of you have used a mantra before. I certainly have, and I had to dust it off in a really particularly tough race I ran many years ago, where I basically just said the word work to myself hundreds, if not thousands of times for the second half of a very difficult marathon I was running, just like grunting along, and just like every football follow was saying work, work, work.
Oh, that
work,
is petrifying to
over
hear
and over
coming
again.
up on your shoulder. Did you catch
and I was
anyone
saying it
while
out,
like muttering?
I was
work.
I was saying it out loud to myself, and I was going by like various volunteers, and I think they thought I was losing my mind because I also looked pretty rough, but I was like, work, work, work.
That would be
and
terrifying. Well, it works.
It got me through the race. And there's philosophers have chimed in on this. There's a little bit of science around this, but basically it's like, you want something affirmational, something positive, something simple, something that can kind of direct you and ground you in the moment and just keep you focused on the task. It's basically a way of what you were describing, Caitlin, with like, it's like a really immediate incremental segmentation of a race so that you can just get through the next little tiny chunk, and for sort of turning it into like a moment by moment type breakdown. And one interesting little factoid I read in my Googling journey on just why it is that mantras work is that, like, apparently embracing the suck, or, dwelling on the negativity or the negative experience in the moment is really dangerous and often creates a complete and total disaster for you. So a mantra is a way to steer clear of focusing on that negativity and focusing on the physical pain. And it's directing you towards getting something done and staying focused and staying on plan as well, right? Because you're coming up with the mantra in advance of the race when you're making your plan and you're thinking about the race. Do either of you...
You're convincing me to do it. No, I was just going to say that, I don't have one, Michael. I've never used one. And I think that I really want to put one together for Boston because I think I'm going to need it. I do something a little stranger. And I don't know if other people do this. I actually learned this from Anna Frost. She ran the Coastal Challenge. I ran the Coastal Challenge.
I know Anna Frost. Shout out to Anna.
Okay, shout out to Anna. She's so awesome. She's we ran the Coastal Challenge the same year, and had a lot of afternoons and evenings at the campsites. And she gave me this tip. And what she says when things get tough for her is that she counts her steps. And I started doing this, and it works for me. I actually did it today. I had a really hard workout today. And what I do is to kind of distract myself is I start counting the steps just on one side. And then I check to see if the 100 meters has gone by for the 100 steps. It's just this game that I play with myself to kind of distract my mind and to think about, okay, I only have 200 more meters to go in this repeat. That's 100 steps on one side. So if I can get to 100 steps, I can finish the repeat. And it is something that really works for me. And speaking about sounding crazy, saying work, 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 I think counting your steps is the same level of crazy. But it has really worked for me. So thanks, Anna Frost, because I've been using it for the last 8 years since we had met.
And if you're doing an ultra, you're going to do that thousands of times over the course of the ultra. There you go. Okay, so last one. Last but not least, and this is a tough one because it's like, how do you rebound from this? But getting lost. Getting lost, getting sent off course, going off course. I mean, in the case of Caitlin, obviously you're wandering around in the jungles of Costa Rica for some of the ultras you're doing and other places around the world where you've raced, where it's like the course is an idea. It's a suggestion more than a reality, depending on how well organized the ultra is as well. But even in road races, even in a marathon, I have been sent off course on 2 occasions in a marathon, both kind of shoddy local races. Not the major marathons. They're extremely well marked. If you get lost in a major marathon, that's on you, kid. I can't help you out there. But you can get sent off course. We hear about these nightmare stories where like someone took a wrong turn, they're leading the race and they ran an extra 2 kilometers in a 10K or whatever. What do you do when that happens? How do you rebound from it? Alex Sear, how are your navigational skills?
Terrible. I'm a Google Maps kid. And so I never developed it. I've gotten lost in a 10K. I kept going straight when it was an out and back. I turned around when it was straight. This happened a couple times. I once went for a city run in Halifax, Nova Scotia, a metropolis of maybe 400,000 people, and came back and walked into the wrong house. So,
oh, Alex, and what about the squad race?
Oh, the squad race.
Yeah.
This I blame on one of the lovely volunteers who told all of us to go the wrong way because I was the 3rd guy going the wrong way. So I've been misled many times.
Yeah.
It's you know, we've noticing a theme here. It's never your fault. It's never the runner's fault.
Yeah, it's never my fault.
Of course. Although every bloody race says know the course, it's your responsibility. Fair enough. But that's a tough thing to ask of a runner when they're like in the fugue state that is running a distance race, right? So, but what I think the bigger question that we need to answer here is like, this happens. What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah. What happened when I got lost, just at one point you need to turn the racer brain off when you're quite convinced that you're off course and you're past the distance. You got to chalk it up and find a volunteer, find someone, locate yourself, and then get to the finish. If you're racing a 10K and you have now run 11 kilometers and you don't know where the finish is, your race is done.
Yeah.
Like you haven't proven it. You're not going to prove anything to anybody. You risk tiring yourself out because you're running at 10K pace for about 12 kilometers. Get over the ego, chalk it up as a loss, find someone immediately and just get back to the finish. And then either take the blame for going the wrong way, or, and this is important, let the race know. If this is the race's fault, let them know. Because I'm from a small part of Canada, I've led a lot of races in my life. This is like a 100-person race, much of it recreational. Sometimes I'm leading. If I'm going the wrong way and no one's told me and the course map isn't clear, that's something the race needs to fix. So sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's someone else's fault too.
I would say in ultras, just going like the completely other route, make sure that you have the GPS route if that's available to you in your watch. That's really helpful because markers can fall down, they can get moved around, you cannot see them because you're exhausted. And if you know that the race is going to be marked in a certain way and the organization gives you an idea of how that's going to look, make sure that if you do not see a marker or you feel like you're off course, stop, stay calm, and backtrack until you get back to one of those markers. Okay, it's happened to me a lot where I just, have chosen the downhill real fast. And I'm like, oh, wait a second, was that right? I didn't check in the intersections. That's another big thing for me. When I'm in an intersection, I always do a check. I always look up because when you're trail running, you're usually looking ahead of you, but at the ground to make sure you don't, trip and fall. So when you're at an intersection, look up real quick and see which way the markers are going. Just take that extra second or two. And if you, like I said, don't see marks, turn around and go back to the last place that you did and try to just stay calm. I freak out and start to panic, and that just makes everything worse.
Yeah, I usually start swearing a lot. And I would say that, if identify a race volunteer, a marshal, hopefully, probably if you're lost, there probably isn't one out there. That's probably part of the problem. But talk to your, fellow competitors or somebody that is also in the same situation as you. You got to start game planning. You probably have to backtrack and figure it out. Don't give up on it though. Don't give up on the race. Even if it's like a big goal marathon and you were like, say, running a PB pace, the race of your life, for example, and you got sent off course by a police officer, for example, just backtrack, try not to swear at the cop next time, and then head back towards the course and try to salvage your race. So,
do you have a friend who this happened to?
I have a friend. Yes, I have a friend who happened to. And Yeah, no, I guess know the course as well as you can. And also I would say my parting piece of advice with this would be pick a race that you know is well organized. Pick a race that has got a great reputation for being high quality. Maybe sadly it's usually a bigger race, but there are smaller races out there, community races out there that are well organized and have a good army of people who care, and it's well marshaled and flagged and so on and so forth. But if the race has a bad reputation, just don't run it, especially if that's like a big goal for you and you're coming in with a big number in mind, or you want to perform in a certain way. Don't risk it in a shit show of a race. All right, guys, that was the 10 disaster scenarios in running.
I hope we've prevented some future potential disasters,
race day disasters, and how you can avert them. Yeah, I think we've done a good job at giving you a toolkit for avoiding having these horrible things that have happened to us happen to you. Okay, what to plug really quickly, Mr. Sear? There's a lot going on in the YouTube channel. What do you got in the hopper right now?
Big reviews right now. Nike Premium, Pegasus Premium, Nike Pegasus Plus, the new Pegasus line. I just got a pair of Adidas Adios Pro 4s, so they're prime racing shoes for this year in the mail. And so I'm very much looking forward to trying those out.
Nice.
And down the line, I'm racing a 10K this month, and I want to make a vlog about it because I've set this goal for myself forever to break 30 minutes before I turn 30. I turned 30 in August, and so I'm running out of time. And so that is in the far future, and maybe that's where I'll try these Adidas shoes. So that's what's up with the YouTube. Lots of shoe reviews and a couple vlogs.
And then we've got the newsletter, Caitlin. It's going well. It's going out every day. And you're also building what are we gonna call your studio? We're gonna call it the MH Costa Rica studio, the MH South. Are we going to call it MH South studio?
MH South.
I'm very excited about it. It's been a nice work in progress. It's looking sharp. We're almost ready to go. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos, more like instructional videos about how to run a sub-4 marathon and all sorts of Coach Caitlin sort of things. So I'm looking forward to that. And also we can mention that we've decided to do a vlog about my journey and story of the Boston Marathon. That's something new we haven't mentioned. So
that's true.
We're working on that.
Gonna be good.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun. I'm having a good time working on that. And that'll be, I hope, a fun story. So
I cannot wait to see the final product.
It's very exciting.
Gonna be good. Yeah, Caitlin's she's got a pretty incredible story going into this Boston Marathon. So it's a definite must watch. We'll hype it up as we're putting it together after you crush the Boston Marathon in 5 weeks' time. I also have a vision quest of sorts that we're putting together. Will come out in the next couple of weeks, which is my travel log of running on the trails in Hong Kong and running the Trans-Lantau UTMB event late last year. I finally swallowed my pride, picked my shattered ego up off the ground, and we're piecing the video together, and we'll have that out in the next couple of weeks. We'll plug it in a future pod as well. And a little teaser here, hasn't been locked in yet, but I think we're going to do something live with the podcast Boston Marathon weekend. We will make sure that you are well aware of what exactly is going down if you're going to be in Boston for the big race. But I think we're going to piece something fun together. Okay, guys, until next week, happy running, Caitlin, Alex, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye.